And let's go. Yeah, so welcome everyone to the first community meeting of this year in 2025. As Valerio said before, Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you had like a little bit of time with your family during the holidays and could take a little bit of time off. Organizational stuff, as usual, the community meetings are recorded and they will be uploaded to YouTube. The slides will be published to the Dependency-Track community repository later on, so you can view them as well. If you have questions during the presentation, please ask them via the Q&A function of Zoom. We will try to answer them as we go, or at the very beginning, there will also be an open Q&A session where you can ask both us, the core team, but also maybe someone else in the audience if you want. For the agenda of today, first I will walk you through the upcoming releases that are queued at the moment. I will give a short update on Hyades, so the next major version of Dependency-Track. There's a vulnerability database effort that we have more or less kicked off a few months ago. I will give an update on that one. And then we have a special guest, Ralph, who contributed the collection projects feature for the next version of Dependency-Track, which he will demo. Welcome, Ralph. Very happy that you're here and that you're presenting today. And then towards the end, as I said, a Q&A session. First, for the upcoming releases, we have both a bug fix version and a new minor version lined up. The bug fix version 4.12.3, has already 7 fixes done, for 4 further fixes outstanding. And we think we can get this done in another 1 or 2 weeks, possibly sooner. For version 13, and I linked the GitHub milestones for both of these versions to the right, if you want to look at them. For version 4.13, there are 8 issues outstanding. And I would just like to refer to the previous community meetings of the last, I think, 1 or 2 months, where we talked about which features are going to be in this release and which were already merged and implemented. One major thing I want to call out is the deprecation, or not the deprecation, the cancellation of the deprecation of the badge support without authentication. So if you used the badge feature in Dependency-Track before, you can globally enable this feature, and then you can like link SVG badges in your project's repositories, in your project's README. And this feature has been without authentication since forever. So we originally planned to deprecate this and in favor of a solution which requires you to add an API key to the URL, which you embed somewhere. And we received community feedback that this is not a desirable way to go forward. So we removed, or we canceled, this deprecation of the legacy way to do this. And we will take a step back and relook at the implementation for this to make it better. To not use API keys essentially, but maybe dedicated tokens that are not as sensitive. There's a, like as I teased before, the project collection feature is a major feature that was contributed that has finally landed. It is in master and it will be in version 4.13 now. Again, demo will be later. And the estimated time of arrival is quite open at the moment. The 8 issues that are still outstanding are a bit larger. So it's hard to give an estimate here, but we could decide as usual to just move outstanding issues to the next release and release this one sooner. In fact, we got a request to do this already via GitHub discussions, I think yesterday. Maybe if any of you have an opinion on this, just let us know. But this is definitely something we can do to shorten the wait for the new features. Pause for Mark. Moving on to the Hyades update. The main thing, and I teased this in the last community meeting at the very end, is we are looking to drop the dependency on Kafka. Towards the right of this this slide, you can find an architecture decision record where we documented why we are doing this and what we are going to do to replace it. It all really comes down to that we had the realization that Kafka does not solve enough of our problems to justify its use, and it's quite the heavy dependency to have if it doesn't contribute as much to your architecture and to your implementation. So we are aiming to go all in on Postgres instead, and there are more details in the ADR that are linked to the right. So The main benefits really are this will be a lot simpler to develop, both for us and for community members. It will be way simpler to operate because it's like just one thing and the application instead of application, database, message bus, and probably other components. And it will be way, way, way simpler to debug if something goes wrong. There are way more reasons. Again, like please have a look at the ADR, let us know what you think, and there will be more documentation coming as well. We already, like before we considered this move, we already implemented proof of concepts that like work already. And we have implemented something based on Postgres for asynchronous task execution and queuing. We have a workflow orchestration that already works. And we have notification publishing, again, like working proof of concept already. We are also currently working on, as I mentioned, more ADRs. So we want to have this documented why we are making this move and what we are going to replace the current implementations with. Also like design documents, because the changes we are making are quite large. And we want to make sure that the public APIs, for example, of the new queuing and workflow orchestration parts are documented well enough so external contributors have a place to look for when they contribute, right? We hope this will make contributions a bit easier as well. And there's still a pending release of version 0.6.0 for Hyades. It will still be Kafka-centric, but this will probably be the last Kafka-centric release that we will make. Next up, we will try to get the foundations that I mentioned that already work merged into the main branch, essentially. And then working on migrating existing functionality from being dependent on Kafka towards this new architecture. And we will most likely have to use at least 1 or 2 feature flags to not impact users who already have adopted Hyades and are reliant on some Kafka parts. And we are also, this is also part of the planning that we're currently doing. If, for example, someone is dependent on receiving notifications via Kafka, we will implement a replacement for that so that you can still dispatch notifications to a message broker of your choice, for example. And to give you an outlook, one of the things that we think is exciting for the work that we already did is the workflow orchestration part, because one major problem with both Dependency-Track version 4 and the current Hyades implementation is you cannot see what's going on in the asynchronous task execution, right? You upload a bomb and then some things happen, but if something goes wrong, you cannot see what went wrong unless you check the logs. And the problem is that many users who use Dependency-Track do not necessarily have access to logs, or who have to bother their operations team, for example, to get access to them. So we are trying to make this a little bit more observable from within the application itself. And doing this in a relational database really gives us the tools to do this, to improve observability as well, even for normal users. So not only can you see what is going on, but you also can see, like for analyzing a project, this is a task that has multiple steps. It forms a workflow. And you will be able to see which steps were executed when, and if they failed, why they failed, and if they were retried, then when they were retried and why. Yeah, so this is quite exciting, and we will definitely demonstrate more of this in future community meetings. Next update for the vulnerability database effort. A quick reconciliation. In the Dependency-Track project, we realized that pulling in more and more external databases, vulnerability databases are, how do I say it? It doesn't really scale that well, because every single Dependency-Track instance has to mirror the MVD, has to mirror GitHub advisories, has to mirror OSV. And it all really makes the whole thing more complex than it needs to be. If you look at solutions like Trivy or Gripe, what they do is they have one centrally compiled database that every instance just downloads and is ready to go. And we wanted something quite similar to this. There's an issue, again, linked here. It's a pretty large one, but it describes the entire effort and why we're doing this and what we want to achieve. Implementation-wise, there has not been any progress, really. But what I want to drive home a little bit is that there's still lots of research to be done, and you could really help with this if you have free time or are interested in this area. What we are currently looking at, for example, is, are there any existing efforts that we can reuse or at least partly use to build our solution on? We created sub-issues for this. So if you, for example, are knowledgeable in how Trivy does this or how Gripe does this, you could pick one of those issues and do a little bit of research on this. I personally am currently looking into Nextbee's vulnerable code, which is a vulnerability database that has been sponsored by European or by EU efforts. It has funding from public funding, essentially. And what I'm looking at, for example, is, does it provide all the data that we need? And what vulnerable code does is it's very specific for software packages, for libraries, essentially. But in Dependency-Track, we also want to support hardware components because we want to analyze the whole stack, if you will. So while vulnerable code brings some of the parts that we need to the table, it is not the entire solution. So either we contribute to this project to also support hardware components, or we build our own additional things around it, or we just go another way entirely. Just to give you an idea of what we are looking at here when we evaluate other projects on this topic. Also, like, there's this question too, or the design to be created, essentially what data specifically we want, because there's a lot of data in all these different databases, and in what form, so it is easily digestible for Dependency-Track instances. So in essence, this could be just a database schema design, or the whole procedure around how do we assemble and distribute this database. And in general, really, we could use a little bit more feedback on this, like both on a positive side, but also on a negative side. If you have any concerns around this, if you have questions or feature requests, even if you have specific needs for a database when it comes to Dependency-Track, just let us know. At the moment, there are, like, I think 10 thumbs up on the issue, but not much more. So if you have any input, then please just let us know. It is quite important for us to know if more changes are needed. And with that, I have talked enough, and I would hand over to Ralph to present the collection projects feature.
Yeah, so thank you, Niklas. Give me 1 second to share my screen. Okay, so that should work, right?
Yep, we can see your screen.
Okay, so my name is Ralph King, and I'm the head of the Competence Center for Cyber and Software Security at M&M Software. And one of our latest contributions is the project collections feature. So first, let me give you one slide info about what we are doing so that you get an idea where this idea is coming from, what this need is actually coming from. So M&M is a full-range software partner. So we are creating software on behalf of our customers. We rarely have own software, but some we have as well. And we have a lot of different types of software, like all kinds of types, from mobile to cloud to IoT stuff, desktop applications, whatever. And from very small projects with like 1 or 2 people up to multi-team projects distributed over our 4 locations in Germany, China, and India. And we're working with like 300 employees on these topics here. So let me take you back a bit into 2022, in the era before version 4.7, actually, because that's actually when we started to work on this feature in general, or for the preparation of this. Our problem back then was that we had introduced Dependency-Track in our projects, and it was basically a bit of chaos, because what we had is we have a lot of different customers with a lot of different projects per customer, also a lot of changing projects, because one project ends, next starts, so maybe it's still in maintenance phase, the old one, a lot of people changing between different projects, some being part of multiple projects as well. So the overview within Dependency-Track was quite difficult, also with different types of projects, with multiple sub-projects, some being versioned a lot, some having multiple environments, and so on. So Dependency-Track offered a flat list of projects back then, having like one project version independent, or one project in Dependency-Track being one single service or application version of our development. And there was no structure at all, so it was hard to see what actually belonged to which logical project or to which customer or to which cloud environment or whatever. Also, another problem we had is notifications could be configured per single project in Dependency-Track or globally, which both didn't fit our needs here, and the same also for policies, since we have a lot of different teams, different kinds of projects, and different responsibilities various. So what we did for version 4.7 already is we started to introduce features to get some structure in Dependency-Track, or basically we made use of actually features that halfly were available in the backend but missing in the front end, and maybe some workaround that missing. So we added UI support for parent and child relations, which was the first step that we made here. And also we added child project support for alert rules as well as for policies. So what we achieved with version 4.7 already is we now could structure our projects much better. We could, for example, structure it by root project for a customer, then a logical project for the project of this customer, and then possibly also different environment if it was like a cloud project. So we also could put all the different project versions of one specific application into one parent that altogether gave us a lot of better overview of everything. And also now we could configure single alerts and policies high in the structure and auto-applying them to all children. So it was quite easy now to create a team, create an alert rule for that complete team and the applications that it was responsible for on a very high level, and then auto-apply this to everything below it. So we got rid of all the manual work or some additional scripting that we needed to get all this done in for the single projects here. But this also came with some drawbacks still. Users were partly confused. We've seen that from internal users. We've also seen this in Slack discussions and also some GitHub issues that I saw. Because if you clicked on like a parent project, you basically looked at an empty project. You had no indication at all that there's something beneath that in the structure. And people were wondering, okay, this project looks like empty. Numbers were displaying 0. There was no components, no vulnerabilities, no anything in there. So we've got a lot of user requests for some better overview, also for some summaries on a higher level entries. For example, the summary issues of all microservices for the production environment, at least sum up the numbers of them so they get a overview and a comparison also between the different environments. So looking forward to 4.13 now, we hope that we can solve that problem now with a lot more usability and a better overview. So this collection feature actually has another preparation already in 4.12, which is the introduction of is latest version flag for projects, which can be used for some modes that you can use the collection projects for, which helps a lot for some types of applications here as well. So what does this feature do? We can now define this structural or meta projects, which we call collection projects, which basically are collections of different kinds of projects. They are not meant to have own components, own vulnerabilities, or own policy violations. So they're basically only collections not having own data. And if you open such a collection project now, you also can see which children are inside that collection instead of having a lot of empty tabs there. And what else you can do is you can aggregate the metrics from different children. And we implemented so far 3 different modes that we thought might be helpful for us, which is we are aggregating metrics of all the direct children, having specific tags, or direct children which are marked as the latest version of this specific application. So if you have a CI/CD pipeline which is creating new versions, based on the version schema that you're using, you could automatically mark this version as being the latest, and that could also help then if you want to aggregate metrics of, for example, only the latest version to see what the current development version here actually shows. And also you can nest these collections within each other. So if you have a collection project, it can contain another collection project, which could also contain more collection projects, and you can sum up the numbers high up in the structure. I will show you that in some demo soon. So some example use cases that we have, for example, is that we have all the versions of one application into one collection and only show, for example, the metrics of the latest dev version to quickly see not addressed issues in a higher level of the hierarchy, where we see where we need to look at and so on. We also can track and summarize metrics of multi-service cloud projects per environment. So we can have a collection project per environment, like production, QA, or dev environment, and put everything for this environment or microservices, for example, of this environment into that collection project, having numbers per environment. And then we possibly could put all these environments all in another collection that then, for example, highlights the latest dev version, or could also highlight the latest production version. So high in the hierarchy, you can see you have a lot of overview, much more than you had before with the with the non-meaning or non-saying, let's say, list of projects and a lot of individual numbers here. Or you can combine all the above and do a complete summarize of multi-application projects, for example, summarizing metrics of all mobile apps, desktop clients, web front ends, cloud backends, and IoT apps all together so that you have a complete state of the project in the way you want it. So let me show you what that could look like. So this is how it actually looked before 4.7. So we still can look at this flat project view. With the naming, you can see a bit of a structure, but this is kind of a small example, but still the list is already quite large, and only based on the names in a large environment, it's hard to see that. So what we've done is we've structured this now, and you see this new icon here. So this means that this is a collection project, and the metrics that are shown for this project are actually calculated metrics based on children. So this example here, so some awesome product that we seem to create, so colleague prepared that for me, is we have here a web UI for this project, we have some backend, and we have an Android application, for example. So looking at the Android application, we see, okay, we have multiple versions of that application right now. We have this one marked as the latest version here. And you see we have some different vulnerabilities here. Unfortunately, we do not have any policy violations since I yesterday figured out you can't create policies after you have set up all the projects and have them applied to existing projects already. So you just need to trust me that that works the same way for policies or policy violations as it works for vulnerabilities, actually. So what we've done here is, what you see here is that if you hover this icon, it says, okay, the metrics of the collection project are calculated by aggregating numbers of the latest version of direct children. So latest version is this here. So you see these numbers, this number here matches actually this one here. So that's for that simple use case where you have for like a version software and want to see, for example, the latest info here. Looking at the web UI, which is also quite simple, is here we have a simple web front end, which is deployed to 3 environments. Could look like this here. We've also a latest version marked as dev version, but for this example, we also added a tag, an example tag. And what we did here is we are aggregating the numbers of the children with the tag example. So you see these numbers here are actually matching the number of this tagged version here. So looking at the more complex example would be here the backend, for example, where we have 3 different environments, and below each environment we have like 2 microservices, for example. And all of these are again collection projects, so this is the 3rd nested level here already. And what we're doing here is we're just adding up all the numbers of all the direct children, so that we have an overview per environment on this level here. Again, this is here marked as the latest version of our dev environment. So this is what the latest state should look like. And if you're looking at the backend parent here now, we see that here we are also aggregating the numbers here of the latest version again. So we have the dev environment marked as the latest. So it will take this number here up into the backend, which is done this here. And then we are summing up all the numbers of this product, basically the web UI, taking the backend and the Android app, and sum that up on the top level of this project, which you can also see here, that this is aggregating the numbers of all the direct children. So the number on the top here are the sum of all this on the bottom. So that's how the metrics aggregation works here, actually. So you can define pretty freely how you want to display these metrics, how you need your overview, so you're quite flexible here. If you're opening now such a product, so let's say this one here, you can see we've got here our chart, and you see these blue lines here, which are also new, which indicate that at this point we changed some collection logics. So whenever we are changing the collection or the way how this collection aggregates the metrics, we added an indicator here in the chart to indicate this, because otherwise it might be a bit confusing why the numbers here are jumping quite much because somebody reconfigured this project, for example. So you have an indication here, you've got the same here on policy violations. You see there's much less tabs than before, or than for regular projects. You just have one tab here, and that is basically the sub-tree of this specific project. So now you only see what is below this project in the tree. So this is reusing the general project list, but focused on that project that you have opened. You also have the indication on top here again to see that this is a calculated project. Looking at, let's say, the Android app here now, we've got the same again. So here again, now you see just the different versions of these Android apps. So you also have quite a nice entry point here if you just want to show these numbers to somebody and focused on a specific area. So you can also point to this one here. And also on the top here, the metrics again are the ones according the calculation logic that has been selected. You can change this in the view details dialog here again. So here you have this project collection logic where you can select how this shall be done, or setting it to none would be a regular project again. You can also create this or mark this as a collection project later. Looking at the regular project now again, you see this is the latest version that we introduced last version already. You can have the indicator here. Now you have the standard view that you all know. So that is basically what we introduced here. So we try to avoid the confusion that people click on the top level project and find nothing again. So that confusion is hopefully helped now with that overview that they have, and having these numbers all summed up makes it a lot easier if you look at higher levels and to get better overviews. Yeah, I think that is everything. Are there any questions or any feedback?
Hey, Ralph, thank you for this. It was really good, really good. It is something that really needed, I would say, 1.5 years ago, except for those reasons. Basically, something that mimics multi-tenancy, so you can have logical separation. So thank you.
You're welcome.
It looks very good. A vast improvement, I have to say. You know, it was always a bit of a challenge, especially with a large number of projects, which I think Nicholas will be brutally aware about what we're talking about. That would actually be very useful. I do have a supplementary question on this, and this is out of the scope of this project. I understand. If you had authorization requirements being brought in to access only specific projects, maybe the top level projects,
yes.
Do you think that would be problematic, or?
We are actually doing this. So what we have is we have connected this to our Active Directory, and our IT is anyway managing central groups for each project. So we have people in each group and one group per project. So what we do is when we add a new project, we add that group to Dependency-Track, and then use also a group API token to create all this projects and the complete project structure, as well as all the subsequent projects via the CI/CD pipelines, so that people automatically then have also access based on that group they're part of. And if people are part of multiple groups, then they have access to those multiple projects that they need to. But this is managed outside Dependency-Track by our IT then.
That's fine. The provisioning obviously is separate, and how that's done, that's fine. But thank you.
I think to add to this point is one missing piece is the hierarchical support for, or the, how do I say it, the ACL support for hierarchical projects. So yes. I think what Ralph, what you described is you give explicit permission for each individual project, right? But yes. Ideally you would only give permission to the top level project, and then all the projects below it would just inherit that permission model, right? Yes. So it would require less overhead, and that is still pending at the moment.
Yeah, so we've tried that before. There was an open pull request from us for that topic as well. Unfortunately, as Nicholas figured, that has some performance impact. as on the way that we did it, and it would need quite some refactoring to do it in a different way, probably using some caching or whatever. But at the moment, I don't have the resources or time to do this. So if somebody is happy to take that topic over and improve this pull request, feel free. Yeah, but the idea was there. We just couldn't complete that part.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, please go ahead.
I was going to say that now that the PR is actually merged, it's now kind of greenfield for people to be able to add to it. It's basically opening up for people to support it. But sorry, Nicholas, what were you about to say?
I was just going to add that because it is recursive, or it would be recursive, this permission model, that's what's making it expensive. If we can find a good solution for this, this would be awesome.
I'm not sure if with Hyades, if you limit it to Postgre, if Postgre has some kind of recursive queries which could help here, I'm not sure about that. But with the current support of multiple databases, we figured it's not easy to do this via the database.
Yep, 100%.
So maybe that's also maybe something that can be postponed to Hyades, because then it would be much easier probably.
Yes. Again, 100%. Yes.
I do have an additional question. You mentioned environments, right? Dev, production. How those environments they are inserted inside the Dependency-Track?
Yes.
Where that information is coming from?
But information coming from in which environment the service is, or what do you mean?
Let's say there is a microservice B, as you showed in your example. It is deployed in QA. How do I know where is this information coming from?
This is coming from our CI/CD tooling. So we've got some CI/CD scripting, which is part of our pipelines, deployment pipelines, which is creating that structure, which has the information to which environment we are deploying. And we create a corresponding environment in Dependency-Track and upload then into a project within that environment.
Okay, so it is when you trigger the deployment, in the end, if that is successful, it's going to ingest that information in the Dependency-Track, something like that.
Yes, exactly. The corresponding SBOM for the deployed application is then uploaded to Dependency-Track in a corresponding structure.
Okay, how do you remove, or better, what happens when you remove a microservice? Do you have also a pipeline that cleans up, or is going to work?
No, at the moment we don't have that. It rarely happens that we're actually removing a microservice at the moment. And if that is the case, then somebody with corresponding permissions can just set that project in Dependency-Track to inactive if he thinks that's no longer needed. But we are not doing it automatically.
Yeah, it looks like a little bit imperative. So you're going to encounter this problem at scale when you have a lot of workloads moving around. The way I've solved this is I have a little sensor deployed in Kubernetes or in any AWS environment, which basically is listening for events such as added workload, removed workload, and is sending a little post, which is like 220 bytes. So it is very lightweight. And that tells my backend whether or not a microservice has been removed. So there is no maintenance.
Yes. The problem for us is that we've got so many different kinds of projects, not always Kubernetes and also a lot of other Azure services and so on. So we would have to automate a lot here to do this automatically, to figure these things out. So at the moment, the problem is small enough that it can be done manually by the teams.
Yeah, thank you. Let's maybe have an offline chat. But thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So one comment on the issue of what to do when stuff gets deleted. I actually have that in a totally different instance where I've got a production dependency track syncing using webhooks to a test dependency track. And the projects are automatically created in production. And then they might be cleaned up when there's no need for that project anymore, but they're not automatically cleaned up in the test. So, you know, there are, I can see that there's more than one reason to actually have some kind of sort of easier sort of automation for cleanup. But now for questions. Am I thinking that, am I right in understanding, Ralph, that a single project can be in one collection. It can't be in multiple collections. Because in your example, you gave the example, say, for instance, of an application where you had different versions of the application as the members of the collection. And another one, you have a collection which is, say, everything which is running in production. But the thing is that a version of a project can be a member of production. It can also be a member of that of itself. In other words, its own project, and it happens to be the latest version. But currently, this functionality is it's one-to-one, so a project can only be in one collection.
Yes, so currently it's a one-to-one parent-child relation. So you can't have it in multiple collections.
Right. I mean, I can go on.
Probably we also thought about these things. With the current structure, this is quite hard to realize. I think this is more the use case if you have like also let's say components which are ingested by other applications, or also complete services which are ingested by other applications, that you probably would need some kind of system that allows you to refer between different applications. For example, like having a project with an SBOM that refers to another project, which is also part of Dependency-Track. That is something that would be missing for some use cases additionally, but I think this is not what we try to achieve with this like parent-child relationships here.
So would that basically perhaps be enabled when we implement support for BOM-link, Nicholas?
Yes.
Yep.
My other thing, totally different, with the new functionality introduced a version or two ago for tag management, where you can have a list your tags and see a couple of columns. What projects has this tag? What policies has got this tag? Might it be an idea to actually have an additional column to say what collections has this tag? So that you can actually see that if you are planning to delete a tag, you're not going to break your collections.
Could be an idea.
I'll log something.
I'm not using the text that much at the moment, so I'm not sure how that use case really could look like, but could be an addition that we could do in future maybe.
Or somebody else, as you said.
Yes, or somebody else.
It should be quite easy to add this. I guess literally just one column in the text table. And the backing SQL queries are quite simple. Like all the infrastructure around this is already there, so it's not much effort. Maybe we can even get it done before the version 4.13 release.
Cool. I'll log something.
Thanks. Any more questions or feedback or criticism or? If not, or while we are waiting, I also want to highlight that Ralph and this team did not only contribute all the project relationship stuff, but I think you also contributed a rework of the dependency graph feature, and I think quite a bit more. So I think you and your team have to be one of the biggest contributors to the project as a whole. I want to make sure I highlight this. Like, really, thanks for everything you're doing. It's much appreciated.
On this subject,
Thank you for
do you have a
Gaston.
screenshot? Do you have a screenshot? Screenshot of this dependency graph?
I don't know, Ralph, do you have still a running instance where you can show it?
That would
For the
be cool,
dependency
because
graph.
it is a little bit minimal, so that is interesting.
You mean of a component dependency graph?
Oh yeah, the one that was
Sure,
mentioned.
if
as,
anything that I can
factor.
show right now. I don't really have a big example that I can easily show. I think I can try. The projects here don't have any graph, so just imported some modified SBOMs here, so our graph broke, so I can't show anything right now.
No worries. Maybe my mention was a bit confusing. So I was referring to like this enhancement was done like years ago even, or like 1 or 2 years ago. There was a time where the dependency graph couldn't like render nodes deeper than 3 levels. And it had a bunch of other issues that Ralph and this team have fixed and enhanced. So that I was referring to. The graph, I mean, is just the dependencies view in your project, in the project view.
Yeah, that works well.
Yeah, well,
Alrighty.
it didn't used to work well, and it was Ralph's team that contributed a lot to it. It used to have some real performance issues. I'm not saying it's perfect now, but it's an order of magnitude better.
Yes. Vinod, you're raising your hand.
Well, so it's a question for you, Nicholas. So the Hyades next steps, right? Like, so if I understood correctly, you're waiting for the feedback from the community on the ADR, and after that, like, how many more like versions we are planning to keep Kafka within Hyades, like, and how that gradual rollout will work. Like, I believe you are planning to keep a feature flag and at some point, so that the existing Kafka users can still use it, Kafka, as well as the new way of doing it. At some point, you are planning to, I believe, deprecate the Kafka and remove it, right? Like, do you have any higher level plan on that, or still early stages on that? Yeah.
Yes, going through your questions. First, for the feedback, yes, I would like feedback, but also we are not blocked on getting feedback because we have quite a bunch of other stuff to work on in parallel. So again, if anyone has feedback, please like shout at us for this. Then for the migration, yes, the end goal would be to remove Kafka entirely. The good thing is that Hyades mostly uses Kafka internally, so for its inner workings, there aren't many dependencies to the outside world, if you will, except for notifications. And like we know people who already adopted this project rely on these notifications being in Kafka right now. So the plan is to gradually remove Kafka, and yes, we will use feature flags. So people who deploy it newly can start out with the Postgres-based things, and people who already have installed it or deployed this can still use the Kafka things. But as soon as we migrate functionality from the Kafka architecture to the Postgres architecture, we might kill off the respective Kafka versions because we cannot maintain multiple versions at once. And then for the notifications, again, once we have an implementation for that done, we will provide a migration path for people who need it. But yeah, that's the plan.
Does that mean version 5 will be completely Kafka-less? Like, you don't even, there won't be a feature flag for Kafka. It's a notification implementation. Okay, got it.
That is the plan, yes.
Awesome.
Michael.
Yeah, just a question regarding the Postgres, or the move to Postgres from Kafka. Will there be support for a separate data source for the Postgres that manages that manifests the message bus, or will it assume that you use the same instance?
That's a very good question. There will be the option to use a separate database for this. So we have designed this in a way that code that uses, for example, the workflows cannot rely on workflow and queuing being transactional, right? So if you want it, if you need it, you can just point all the asynchronous messaging stuff to a separate database, yes. But maybe let me just add something. So we did some performance testing already, and this doesn't seem to have that big of an impact on the core database. So I think small to medium-sized deployments can just like use one database and be fine with it. And because Postgres is kind of easy to migrate as well, if you later down the road find out, hey, you definitely need a separate database, migrating is not that painful, at least not as painful as migrating Kafka, for example, or RabbitMQ or whatever. Yep.
That's good.
Any more questions? Doesn't seem to be the case. Then I would say we close it here. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Ralph for demoing and or contributions of course. And see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. And see you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.